Okay, let's talk grades and how you're going to earn your A. Okay, so the first thing to know is this, is the way I grade for this course is really unconventional, but it works in your favor. Every semester I ask all my classes, like I'm going to ask you at the end of the semester, what did we do that worked? What should be changed? What should I not do anymore? And one of the things that always comes up is students say, please keep the grading system. It really made things easier, made life easier for me. All right. So about 20 of you or so have had classes with me before. So I know that you know the grading system totally rocks and works in your favor. But if you haven't had classes with me before and you have any anxiety about it, feel free to reach out to me and we can chat about it, or you can chat with some of your classmates that have already experienced the wonders of this grading system. All right, so a couple things to note. None of your assignments is going to get a letter grade. So you're not going to turn in a thought primer. I'm going to say like, oh, that's a B plus. That's not going to happen. Same thing with the inquiries. You're never going to get a letter grade on any individual assignment. And this is a really important thing. Your grade categories don't interact with one another. So it's probably fairly typical in classes where you have like, oh, you have an essay, you have some essays to write, and then maybe you have some exams to do. And maybe you got an 80% on your essays, but you got a 70% on your exams. That kind of averages out to 75%. And here's your grade, 75%. It doesn't work that way in this course, right? So whatever you do on your thought primers has no impact on what you do on your inquiries or your exam part. So they don't have any impact on one another. You got to think of these three assignment categories as functioning very separately together. And then in the end, kind of coming together in a really kind of weird way to translate to a letter grade that goes on your transcript. It's sort of, our grading system is going to function a little bit like this, what this cartoon says. It says, I love my teacher. She doesn't give numerical or letter grades. She gives emoticons. So I'm not going to give you emoticons, but I'm not giving you letter grades until the very end. Okay, so here's where I'm coming from. You've got these three categories of assignments. You got thought primers, you got exam parts, and you got these inquiries. And when your work comes to me, I evaluate your performance on that task, right? And at the end of the semester, I'm looking at how you performed on your thought primers, or I'm looking at how you performed on average on your inquiries and so forth. And I'm thinking, I look at this, I think, oh my God, this cat blew me away. Totally exceeded my expectations. Usually when I come to this course, I think, well, your garden variety average student is going to perform this at this level. But wow, man, you really like blew it out of the water here and you totally exceeded my expectations. Okay. So that's one way I think about your performance, that it exceeded my expectations. Or I think like, yeah, this is all right. You met my expectation. I have this expectation of how people are typically going to perform on this exam or on their inquiries or on all their thought primers. And you pretty much performed at that level. Okay. Or I'll be getting to the end of the semester, I'll look at that and think like, oh boy, skinny your teeth. You missed it by this much. You nearly met my expectations. And then hopefully we don't get to the end of the semester and I look at you and say like, I'm sorry, but you did not meet my expectations on your thought primers. Okay, that's not going to happen to anybody, so don't worry about it. But these four kind of judgments are how I determine the course grade that ends up going on your transcript. So the question you're probably thinking to yourself is this: well, that's great, but how will I know if I'm exceeding your expectations if I don't know what your expectations are, right? What does it mean to meet your expectations? You're not telling me what your expectations are. All right, that's fair enough. So let's roll this way. Whenever we say E or M or N or D, we're really referring to one of these categories of judgment, okay? So when we get to the end of your thought primer, when we get to the end of the semester and I look at your performance on thought primers for the whole course of the semester, and I see that the average on those thought primers is 80% or higher, I'm going to say like, rock on. That exceeded my expectation, because my expectation is that, your garden variety person comes into the room or comes into the class, and they do an okay job. They don't light the world on fire, but they do an okay job on their thought primers. And that usually means they're somewhere between that 70 and 79%, right? The average grade. But if you can hit that 80% mark, then you've exceeded my expectations. And it doesn't matter whether it's 80% or 100%. It just translates to an E. And you earned an E on your thought primers if you get at least 80%, okay? And then the same principle is going to hold true for your exam parts and for your ethical inquiries. right? So the bare minimum score you want to get on each of the 3 categories is 70%. Once you hit that 70% mark, for each of the 3 categories, you're guaranteed a passing grade. But if you can get up into that 80% or higher range, then you've gone as high as you can go in each of those categories, and you're going to wind up with a really good grade. Here's how that looks. Okay, so for each of those assignment groups, we see here that E, you get an E for 80% or higher, an M for 70 to 79, and so forth. Okay, and when I look at those, I'm going to look at your performance in those 3 areas, and each of those 3 areas is going to get one of those letters. Okay, if I see some E's, you get an A on your transcript. If I see a couple of E's and an M, you get an A minus. If I see an E and 2 M's, you get a B. If I just see a whole bunch of M's, you get a C. See how that works? So each category of assignment earns one of these letters, E, M, N, or D, and then that combination of those 3 letters at the end of the semester for your thought primers, your inquiries, and your exam parts is going to translate into a grade that goes on your transcript. So let's say we get to the end of the semester, and we're looking at your thought primers, and it's like, cool, you got 82% as an average on your thought primers. Well, that's an E. And we look at your exam parts and we think, all right, 78%, I can see that that's an M. And I see you got an 80% on your inquiries. All right, 86%, that's another E. 2 E's and an M, you get an A minus for the course. Simple. Now, let's say we get to the end of the semester and you've got 90% on your thought primers, 75% on your exam parts, and 79% on your inquiries. What's the grade you get on your transcript? Well, hopefully you said a B, because you've got an E and then 2 M's. Okay, so it kind of works like that. Now, you'll notice that over here we have N and D. Okay, and that would take, in a situation like the one you have here, where thought primers are 96, an E, exam parts are 82, an E, and inquiries are 67%, that's an N. And that doesn't show up anywhere over here. Okay, so here's how N's are going to function. Anytime you drop into that 65 to 69% range on one of these categories here, an N in any one area drops your course grade to a C as long as one of the other 2 areas is an E. Okay, so in this case right here, both areas are E's, but you'd still wind up with a C in the course because you didn't quite meet that bar for your inquiries. Okay, so getting an N is not the end of the world unless you find yourself in a situation like this where you've got an N and no other E's, right? You've got an N and a couple of M's, then you're going to wind up with a D in the course, and you don't want that. But having a single N is the worst that's going to happen. As long as one of the other categories is an E, is going to drop your course grade to a C. There's no reason, though, for you to be getting N's, and there's no reason for you to be getting D's. In other words, these less than 65% on any of these categories. You just have to kind of do the work week to week, and you will be successful, okay? So if you look at this scenario right here, this is not a good one. Thought primers are 95%, so that's rocking. That's an E. And the exam parts are 99. I mean, these are out of the park, right? So those are both clearly E's. But the inquiries are 62, which means they don't meet expectations. And a D in any one area drops your course grade to a D. And a D in any 2 areas drops your course grade to an F. Now think about what's really going on here. So with this grading system, we've sort of obliterated the distinction between an A and a B. Once you hit that 80% mark, you've gotten as high as you can get in that category for that assignment, okay? But what this grading system is predicated on is that you're actually demonstrating competent performance in very different kinds of ways. So your thought primer is showing that I can successfully perform in this ongoing explorative way with my classmates on these philosophic issues, and my exam parts are showing you that I can answer questions about the kinds of things that we're reading about and talking about, and my inquiry shows that I can apply these concepts to situations and generate defensible positions. Okay, so they're very different kinds of activities, and if you aren't able to perform at a minimum level of expectation, in other words, you get less than a 65, it means you haven't really been successful in the course. Now, here's what I'll say. The only way people screw up in my courses is by not doing the work. If you do the work, you're going to be fine. right? Because if you're doing the thought primers and the exam parts, you're going to understand the stuff enough to be able to apply it in your inquiries. And if you're staying engaged in the class, you're going to want to do the thought primers because they're fun, F-U-N, okay? So if you have questions about the grading system, you can just send those to me or send them to your classmates. I'll kind of go through it with you as we roll through the semester. Now, there's one thing I want you to pay really careful attention to. When you go to grades, okay, in Canvas, and you click on something, say like thought primers, see this at the top here? This assignment does not count towards the final grade. Ooh. You're going to see the same thing when you go to, whoops, that's not what I wanted to show you. Yeah, here it is again, thought primer, or here's your first ethical inquiry. This assignment does not count towards the final grade. It even says that about your exam parts. It doesn't say it there. Well, that was a letdown. Okay. Now here's the deal. Don't be tricked by that. All of these, your thought primers, your inquiries, your exam parts, they do count towards your course grade. They just aren't going to show up as a score in the total down here in your grade page, okay? What you need to be mindful of are these categories right here. Thought primers, what's your percentage? Exam parts, what's your percentage? Because again, the percentage in each one of those areas is going to translate to some number of letters, E's and M's and N's and so forth. And that's where your course grade is going to come from. So again, if you're confused, don't freak out. It's all right. Okay. You also have this thing, and I'll talk to you more about this later. I won't spend a lot of time on it here. You have a couple of what are called no questions asked slip. You could submit those at the end of the semester, and each one makes up for 1 point of a thought primer. Every thought primer is 2 points, and you get the points for just doing it. I'm not going to evaluate the quality of it. I want you to take risks and make mistakes. So just doing the thought primer gets you full credit for the thought primer. Okay, and so each thought primer is worth 2 points. You could use the NQA slip at the end of the semester, and you could give it to me. I guess you're not going to be giving it to me since we're doing all this stuff over computer, but you could send me an email saying like, hey, apply my NQA slips to any thought primers I've been missing, and we'll boost your points by that number. Or maybe you miss an exam part. That's really common. That's the most common use of these NQA slips. And somebody says, hey, can you reopen exam number 5 for me? I want to redo that one. I didn't do well on it, or I missed it entirely. Okay. I'll talk to you more about these NQAs later on. It's nothing to worry about right now. They're just kind of like free passes in case you hit hard times 1 week or a couple weeks. All right. Key to success, stay engaged. If you disappear, you're going to feel embarrassed and bad and then not want to come back to the class. So if something happens where, you have challenges, if you've got kids right now and you work, I don't know how you're managing your life. I'm so glad I'm done kidding. Well, not kidding, raising my kid. So when you run into difficult times, just let me know. I'll work with you. The goal is to get you to the end of the course successfully. Okay. So whatever I can do to help make that happen is what I'm going to do. But I gotta get you to stay engaged because I can't come hunt you down. I'll get coronavirus. All right. Make sure you do the work. It's that simple. I'm going to try to make it really easy for you to work your way through the work, and I'll show you that in another video. But just kind of plod through it. Just get through it. And when you start getting overwhelmed, you just tell me, okay? You need to commit to emailing me any question you have about anything CR related, okay? Seriously. I'm super well connected in CR. And if you have a question about financial aid or EOPS or counseling and advice, anything, I will be able to track down an answer way faster than almost anybody else you can contact will. Seriously, try me. I dare you to ask me questions about CR. If I can't find the answer myself, I will definitely point you to the exact person you need to be answering that question. So do not hesitate. You're not bothering me when you ask me questions or ask me for help. That's why I'm here. Okay? So I really want to encourage you to take risks in this class and look for beliefs you need to examine. As some of you have probably heard me say before, the worst that ever happens is you're wrong about something, and you probably are wrong about a lot of things, and you don't know what you're wrong about, right? That's the sucky part of ignorance, is that you don't even know that you don't know what you don't know, right? And so, you're in a safe place here. If you think about the way the grading system works, my own views can't impact your grade. You either do the thought primary or you don't. It doesn't matter what I think about what you say. You either answer the questions correctly on the exam or you don't. It doesn't matter what I think, Okay, so this is a class that's totally driven by you doing the work. Okay, so that means that you should be not worried about having the quote unquote right opinion about something. You know, try stuff out, see if you can come up with new ideas. It's super exciting when you find things that you thought were true that you now realize like, I need to think about that more. I might not be right about that. Okay, so this is a good place, a good class for you to do that in. All right, so coming up, another video on reasons why you might not like me. Oh, that sounds scary.